I was in a class at Elon called Writing Technologies, and we spent like a couple weeks on Twitter. And there are some like we call them Twitter best practices, and there are like different places that people do offer like ways to be a professional on Twitter. So, I guess like there are those things, but I don't think that the ethics is different from Twitter than like you were saying like on email or in other places.
I think, like I said before, like ethics are kind of a more like foundational thing that you don't have to encompass or like be different for like different contexts. I think that that's the point of them, is that they're broad and they're not necessarily like, oh, this is the code of ethics like for Twitter. Like it would be more of like a code of like guidelines or just like social, I don't know. That's more of like the moral side of it.
Yeah. All right. So in your opinion, what do you think is the most important idea or point of a code of ethics? Or if there's any importance to them at all?
I mean, I think that it's like an important professional guideline for you of what you should be doing, especially when it comes to media. Like the code of ethics like lets you know like what is and is not appropriate for your specific industry for you to do. So I think it's important in that way.
I think like going back to the general definition of ethics, I mean it was pretty much like having a sense of like right and wrong and like standing up for like what's right, I guess. And I mean, so a guidelines for companies would be a little bit different depending on what kind of company it is, but just like looking at this PRSA one, things like be honest and accurate, like that seems like a pretty general idea. So just like going along the lines of doing what's right, I feel like it's pretty much a mainstream thing when it comes to ethics.
Widely applicable. Okay, so do you think how might professionals' communication through new media change or not change at all if codes of ethics were established or were not present? Kind of if just every like, for example, if the PRSA ones were just to be done away with, do you think anything would change in the way people in the professional world behave?
I think that everybody's kind of had that instilled in them already, so they're not gonna say, oh, well, now that this is gone, let's just go crazy on Twitter. I don't know, be inappropriate. So I think that, like we were talking about earlier when we were first defining ethics, I think it's more about doing what's right and wrong rather than following a specific code. It's kind of overarching and broad. So it's not, if they were to take away the code, people would still, because of what society has taught them, follow certain practices.
Yeah, it might shift slightly based on like personal beliefs, but I agree. I think that, I mean, if someone's brought up in a specific society, then they kind of hold the ethical values of that society, and so because many companies like base their like their ethical guidelines on those same values, I mean, people are pretty much gonna keep on with it.
Okay. Alright. So do you guys have any other thoughts on codes of ethics, maybe their purpose, their necessity, or your personal feelings on them?
I wish I could remember the ones that I'm thinking of in media law and ethics.
Well, it's also like media is so important. Like going back to the First Amendment, you know, it's in there that we have like the right to freedom of speech and freedom of the press. So if anything, like we're the watchdogs for other people who are breaking like ethics or are breaking the law. So I don't know what I'm trying to say with that. I guess like we're important to keep the rest of the world in check. We're the people that call people out if they are messing up. So professionally, it's also really important that we stand with integrity as well.
Nice. Yeah. Well, any other thoughts, friends? Well, we want to thank each of you for participating in this group discussion this evening. The information you have given us is of enormous value to us, and to the idea of ethical changes in new media. Does anybody have any questions before we wrap up? Then we thank you for your time and you spent with us this evening, and enjoy the pizza.
Yay.
Thanks, friends.
Thank you.
Kate is ready to go home.